Hey everyone. I'm sorry. I lost the window that we were in. It's just like
three seconds in, he's already lost.
I know. I'm already confused. Anyway, let's start with
Russ.
I want to talk about how the NFL now is not only the most, popular sport, but now it is the most wild and far-fetched rumor mongering sport as well. And I'll give you an example. So the other day, Russell Wilson, his agent says, look, he's not looking for a trade, but if he were to be traded, he would go to these 4 teams. Right. And Russell Wilson hasn't said boo. Matter of fact, then afterwards, Russell Wilson said, I'm not looking for a trade. That all comes out. Today, I see an article that's linking Russell Wilson to the New York Jets. Well, the Jets have cap space, and they have his old coach. So I know somebody that knows Russell Wilson. And so I asked that person, what do you think? And that person told me unequivocally he has zero interest in the New York Jets. And so this is my problem now. It's like when a sport reaches that height of popularity, there are people that are willing to just write anything that has no basis of fact in it anymore. And I don't know, Kev, that kind of irks me a little bit.
Yeah, me too. But it is the way of the world now, and we're not going to cancel culture, social media. So this is going to be the way it is now.
This is an article. It wasn't just like a post,
Yeah, no, I know, but that's the social media approach has now sort of become the mainstream media approach as well. We're concerned about clicks and and so forth. So in order to get clicks, you tend to push the the most outlandish stories. So
well, it's not just social media, and it's not just like bloggers and things of that nature. It's also the teams themselves. And look at what's going on with Roethlisberger in Pittsburgh. The general manager comes out and says, well, he's got a cap hit of like $41 million, and he's like, well, Ben Roethlisberger is our quarterback at this moment, but then hinting that they might cut him, and then I think it was one of the owners, one of the Rooneys, came out and said, well, we'd like to keep him, but we may have to have him like adjust his cap hit. Okay, I mean, so now you're basically negotiating.
They're hardballing him through the press,
right? Through the press. And if he says no, you're going to pay me my $41 million, then they cut him, and then they're assuaged of any guilt or any responsibility. It's Roethlisberger who forced their hand. I mean, Jesus. I mean, what the hell is going on now?
It means all those Super Bowls mean nothing.
But real journalists like those kind of general managers. I mean, those are the kind of people that you like and come out and talk about what's going on. But then when we hear what's going on, we want to criticize it. So, it's better if I was the owner of a team, I'd tell my general manager, don't tell anyone anything.
Right.
Because, just let it play out. Because it's better than creating the chaos that comes out when you tell the truth, because the truth is always ugly.
Yeah, that's true. That's maybe the best quote you've ever said.
That's always ugly. I know.
No one really wants to see, how the sausage is made,
right?
And because it's never pretty, and you're better off. Like I've never understood why an athlete, other than announcing a clothing line or to show pictures of your new dogs, would ever go on social media, because mostly bad can happen when you.
I know, but you know what, Kev? I'll tell you why they do it. It's the younger ones, because they grew up with it now, so now they feel like it's part of their celebrity to go on there, get as many followers as they can, and occasionally spill something on social media. That has now ingrained itself in the culture.
Well, I sort of understand why they do it, but I mean, I wouldn't comment about events, and
no, but that's the more mature Kevin Allen saying that to the less mature 20-year-old athlete.
I mean, look at the Instagram posts of any pop artist, any actress, and any athlete. I don't need to know the stuff that you put on social media, but they feel like that's living vicariously through their fans or whatever, and it promotes them and it promotes their brand, and that's what they want. I mean, hey, you don't think that had an effect on what happened yesterday in California with Lady Gaga's dogs getting
Yeah.
kidnapped or stolen,
Yeah.
and her dog walker getting shot. Well, because
Well, social media is great for celebrities until it isn't.
Right.
I mean, there are a lot of good things that can happen, and you can be an influencer, and people want you. I was made aware of a friend of mine who had a business, and he was trying to get a celebrity, actually a sports figure, to promote it, and what they were asking to, and it was down to, I'll make 3 mentions of it. I'll give you 3 mentions, but I want X amount of dollars.
Wow.
Right.
And that's how it works. So, there is some financial gain as well from it. But, that's different in my mind. When you come out and, show your new puppies, show yourself,
Right.
at a sporting event or at a party, then, some of the nonsense where you start to make comments about, in the political arena, or, I love it as a journalist, but I don't know why they do it, because
Right.
it can only get them in trouble. And, they're in the entertainment business. So every time you comment in the political forum, you're alienating half the people who like you.
Yes.
So, there's reasons not to do it, but it doesn't stop them. They just go. So let's talk hockey.
All right, here we go. Ready? All right, we have the it's 26th. We'll go with that. Hello, Hockey World. It's Friday, February 26th, 2021.
I'm Michael Agello, and I have to say that the Buzzcast is the only sports show this week that didn't mention Tiger Woods.
I'm Russ Cohen from Sportsology.
I'm Kevin Allen, and I'd love to talk about Tiger Woods.
Well, now we have mentioned him. No, and I'm Eklund. You're watching Hockey Buzzcast on HockeyBuzz.com. This is a podcast that comes every Monday through Friday, and there's nothing wrong with talking about Tiger Woods. But we're going to talk about hockey for a bit. And I'm going to start with this, because the Vancouver Canucks are giving away reverse retro jerseys for every goal they score. And since this promotion, they've been shut out twice. Since this promotion started, they've been shut out twice.
I was going to say that's the only way they can have people wear them.
Yeah, that team is getting frustrated. And I think, Kevin, you wrote a really good article about the Canucks a little while back, last 2 weeks ago, I guess it was, or last week it was, maybe. I'm losing track of time. What are you seeing any hope? Do you see this turning around? Do you see where they're going?
No, I don't. And I was surprised, but part of it is this is our fault because I think even though we all know better, we liked what we saw from them last season, and
Right.
even though we know that young teams that are rising always take a step backwards at some point, we just forget that. And
Right.
so we just were projecting a further development of that team, and this is where they're taking a step back. But there's also a lot of practical, reasons. Like their power play was 4th a year ago, and now it's in the 20s.
Right.
And we see that all the time with power plays. Power plays come and go, and and you lose your confidence. And I'm always amazed when we start talking about professional athletes losing their confidence, because it just seems, how can that be? They're professionals, but it happens all the time.
This is everything. So
and the other thing is their goaltending. We're still in a league where if your goaltending is not at least average, you're in deep trouble.
Mm-hmm.
And their goaltending has not been average. Even this season, the average save percentage is down. Last time I looked, it was, last year it was 911. It's been 911 for the last two or three seasons, or around in that area, and it was at like 905 for a while, and then it was at 907.
Yeah.
But Vancouver, their save percentage is down, and a lot of their top players, just are a little bit off.
Well,
this season.
I agree.
I'll give you the unusual point of view from me, which is the glass is half full. If you remember a few years ago when Colorado had that horrid season, that was the year, I believe, that was the last year of Nathan McKinnon's ELC. And
Mhm.
After that, he signed a contract which everybody believes is the biggest bargain, one of the biggest bargains.
Yeah, he gave him a break. There's no question.
He gave him a break, but he didn't have a very good year, and he really didn't have the leverage to ask for like an $8 or $9 million deal. This year, or at the end of this year, is Pettersson and Quinn Hughes's the ends of their entry level deal. Pettersson is not having a great year, 18 points right now. Hughes is having a pretty decent year defensively. He had some problems, but he's having a decent year. They really can't justify asking for $8, $9, $10 million. This might be good news for Vancouver in the sense that either they get them on bridge deals or they get them for a little less on a longer term deal. And, they made a lot of these adjustments to their roster at the anticipation of having to pay Hughes and Pettersson big money. Now, I'm sure Travis Green and Jim Benning are not concerned with that right now. They're concerned with the here and the now of them winning, but that might be a positive afterthought or after effect.
Yeah, those guys should be concerned with their job because right now, this is the fewest points the Canucks have had after 24 games since 1997. Which is
I can remember I said during the summer that I thought Travis Green would be the first coach fired, and a few of you gasped. And the only reason I said it was because I didn't know how they were going to do. And I knew they'd go this way, what we're talking about, or they could still be good going last year, but I didn't know for sure. And so I knew him in his last year and a GM in his last year, if they weren't going to do well, we would talk about things like this, Kevin, and we would say, hey, they are disappointing, and maybe somebody is going to get fired as a result. That's the only reason I said it. It's not because I had a hunch on it, but this is how sports works. And so the Vancouver Canucks were almost set up for this.
Well, let me be the court-appointed attorney representing Quinn Hughes, or to talk to Mike about his contention is they can't possibly have the bravado to ask for the limit. I'm going to suggest that Quinn Hughes is the best offensive defenseman in the game right now.
He's definitely up there, if not the best or one of the best. Yeah.
Can I ask then for 8 or 9 or 10 million? If I'm the best offensive defenseman in the game,
I think he can, but I think the Canucks are gonna. They're not gonna say, okay, we haven't won with you, so we can win without you, that type of thing. But they will. They might hold the line to try to get him on a bridge deal or to try to get him for less. I mean, maybe that'll sour things with him and his representatives, but I think they're right now and they're in a cap situation. It all depends. The bad thing here is that they have to negotiate with Pettersson and Hughes at the same time. I mean, I doubt that they have the same representation.
They've definitely been setting themselves up for that, and they know that that's coming.
I still think those guys are going to want their money. They're just going to say, we did what we could, but it was a mess.
Yeah, right. I mean, Hughes is gonna. His agent's going to walk in and he's going to say, "Look, he's in the top 5 in the league in his position and scoring. It's the most important thing to do as a defenseman. Yeah, that's why we're asking for this money. He's going to ask for it. There's no question.
Pettersson hit the post 8 times. I mean, that's a weird thing you keep hearing. You keep throwing that stat out, but it's a bizarre number.
I hate that stat, by the way.
Yeah, but
when you hit the post, you're wide of the net.
Right.
You didn't get it in the frame. So
even if you get half of those in, that's 4 more.
I think we all could say at this point.
So close counts in hockey now too.
Horseshoes and hand grenades. Yeah.
No, it does not.
Yeah. I want to touch base.
I was just gonna say, I think we could all say now though the sign to Holtby was a disaster. I didn't have any faith in it, but you never know with Braden Holtby. But this is the Braden Holtby we've been seeing for the last few years.
I thought it was smart.
If you're in Holland, do you point to Vancouver and say, "See, it wasn't a mistake. I knew what I was doing when I didn't sign the goal." So
I mean, okay. Right now, and of course, Edmonton will pound me over the head with this, but Edmonton's going great guns right now, mostly because Mike Smith is playing really well.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's not Koskinen. So you can make the argument that Edmonton, with a good goaltender, would never have even been close to falling out of the playoffs. I still think they're going to, because I don't think this can last with Mike Smith, and I know Koskinen is a below-average goaltender. and McDavid and Draisaitl can't keep up the pace that they have been playing at. They're going to have a slump, or somebody's going to get in.
Wait a minute. Why can't they? They're McDavid and Draisaitl.
Yeah, I know. I just don't. It's superhuman is what they're doing, and eventually, somebody's either going to get hurt, or somebody's going to figure a way to shut them down. But I don't
know. See, the only way I say that your conversation goes wrong on that, Mike, is last night it sort of hit me. We're watching the NHL in isolation.
Yep. And
everybody's isolated to their own little parts of the world, and so based on that, the teams that you've always lost to, now you're losing to them more, because it's like there are certain matchups now that are just toxic for teams. And the minute they walk into the arena, it almost seems like there's no chance of winning. And then there's the other ones where you have that other team where they know they're going to win 85% of the games. And I do think it has changed how teams play, and for the regular season. Now, the playoffs for the first couple rounds may be like this. Maybe the play does get ramped up enough that it changes it. But this has hit me weird now, the way teams are playing each other, because teams have not figured each other out. There are some teams that have no answer for other teams.
No,
text with that interesting, what might be a breaking thing. So I'll be right back, guys.
Okay.
I got it.
Now, if we were in a courtroom, I seem to be stuck in courts today. If we were in a courtroom, I would say to the judge, because Russ opened up this subject, I can talk about it,
right?
Because do any of us know how good any team is? Because we're all playing in these little bubbles.
Yeah,
and
right.
We don't play in those 7 teams. I almost feel like there should be 4 Hart trophies this year.
I agree.
1 for each division.
Okay.
We have the Hart Trophy winner in the North and the East and the Central, and because we really don't have any idea. Like, we're all excited about, Florida. They're playing some of their best hockey in their 20-some year franchise history. But, are they? I mean, we think they are, but they're not playing anybody but the teams within. Maybe they just match up well with those teams.
Well, the Hart in the North is going to be pretty tough to determine, because you got McDavid, Draisaitl, Matthews, Marner.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like,
yeah.
But, okay, sticking with the North, and I've been anxious to get your point of view on this, Kev, because we talked about it on Wednesday with the Canadian situation, the firing of Kirk Muller as the assistant and Claude Julien as the head coach. Eck and Corinne Hines, who is our Montreal blogger, seemed to think I was overstating things when I said that firing Claude Julien was idiotic, because I think he was made a scapegoat in this situation. I don't think the problem with Montreal has been Julien. I think it's a problem that they played. The expectations were raised early on with their really good play. They've run into a bad patch, and now Bergevin is looking for a scapegoat. And there you go, Claude Julien fired. It's like he's a great coach. I don't understand why they fired him.
He is a great coach, and under normal circumstances, I would agree with you, and I think that's a fair argument, because he didn't suddenly forget what he was doing. I mean, we were exalting, how he was handling, the Canadiens when they're doing well like that. They were the best transition team in the league for about 3 or 4 weeks. Holy God, could they move the puck? Mm-hmm. The one thing that I'm troubled by is, Shea Weber is not a rock the boat style of captain.
Right.
He's careful in his word choices. He doesn't talk a lot to begin with. And I can't forget the phrasing, so help me out. Mm-hmm. What did he say? He basically said that there was a mess in the dressing room.
Yes,
now, he did. That to me was
sort of volumes.
Yeah.
Okay, so you know what my answer to that is, Kev?
Right.
The last time we heard this at Montreal, look, there's tons of drama in Montreal, in the media, with the fans, in the locker room. The last time we heard this it was PK Subban. They got rid of PK Subban. Now all of a sudden it's back. So now who do we blame? Do we blame Brendan Gallagher? I'll tell you what I've seen, and it really has bugged me. Online, I'm seeing some members of the media now pointing out how Carey Price is having a bad year. Let's go to Josh Allen. And it's like, yeah, okay. If you want to go to Josh Allen,
Jake Allen. Josh is the quarterback in the Bills.
But that's fine. Jake Allen, sorry. If you want to let Jake Allen go for a couple games and give Price a couple days off, fine. But what I also saw were late in the game, Montreal defensemen standing around hoping Carey Price would make a save and not clearing the crease the right way either. They right now are in between, Kev, and I didn't like the firing. And I think Ducharme coming in has taken on a team that he doesn't really know. He's going to try different things. And if it doesn't work out, they're going to be in worse shape at the end of this than they would have been if they kept Julian.
Yeah. Well, in fairness, though, I would say that, Shea Weber is there and you're not.
Yeah,
you're always willing to offer your opinion, and Shea rarely did. So
that's true.
I think there is some indication that Shea thought there was trouble there. Now, I get what you're saying. I really do. I want to side with both of you because I always think, we fire coaches way too often, and this is not a case. I don't see. Have you ever heard of the team sort of giving up on Julian?
No.
That's not what happened. So I don't know what anybody's what Shea Weber was alluding to, but I think he believes there was an issue there. So
well, I heard this point of view and I sort of agreed with it when it came to Carey Price, his save percentage is either right around 900 or slightly below. He's not having a good year. He came out a couple days ago, I think even before the firing, and said, I'm just like out of sorts. I don't know what's going on. I have to sort of straighten things out. And I think it was Darren Drager mentioned this morning. He's like, if he had said that, or if that had been acknowledged before they had decided to fire Julian, it would have been something that Julian could have done, is to sit Price for 2 or 3 games and say, okay, we're going to let him straighten things out. We're going to let Jake Allen play 2 or 3 games, and then we're going to bring Price back. Ducharme coming in as a new head coach, last night he made 8 changes to the lineup in terms of line changes and defensive pairings. He had to stick with Price because Price is the $10.5 million guy, and Price was terrible yesterday. Now he's stuck. Okay, if he goes to Jake Allen now, all of a sudden, okay, Jake Allen is the starter and Carey Price is no longer going to be. It locks Ducharme into a place where he probably doesn't want to be. And this is the situation.
I don't think he had to play Carey Price. I mean, all you got to do is look to Florida, where Bobrovsky is on the bench, and he's a $10 million guy. I mean, I agree. Montreal's a different animal. But I don't know why they continued to play Carey Price. I think it would have been easy, especially in the hockey mecca like Montreal, where they really have an understanding, to just say, hey, he's got to figure it out. We're just going to set him. I mean, he's Carey Price. He'll be back. But, when he's not going well, he just needs to figure it out. And in the meantime, we'll go to Jake Allen. Like, I don't know.
I agree. I mean, if Allen's not going to take Carey Price's starting job no matter what happens. No. I mean, that's not. So at the end of the day, it's just a matter of, okay, you can say that Price is struggling. Just like I don't think Drager or Greg Drager, which is is really taking Bobrovsky's starting job. But he's going to sit there and he's going to be the starting goalie until Bobrovsky figures it out. But at the end of the day, when you get to the playoffs or whatever, if Bobrovsky figures it out, if both goalies are playing well, Bobrovsky's the goalie. I think it's the same thing with Price, and I mean it's even more so with Price. I mean, Price is beyond any
But I do think there is something. If you watch the Canadiens, and it's not really the young players, but I do think some of the players are not playing up to their capability. A fair amount of them, and I do think that Mike, at the end, what you said early in the game was true about Carey Price, but I didn't think he lost it for him in the end. I feel like in the end, it was the Canadiens that lost that game for themselves. I did yesterday.
We're talking about Montreal, but if I don't talk about this now, I'll forget. And I think it is something that it surprised me. Maybe Russ is on top of this, and so you've talked about it before. But I had George Richards, who is the beat writer covering the Florida Panthers for a website there, on my podcast, and we were talking about Spencer Knight. And, I've heard many rumors speculating that Spencer Knight, because Bobrovsky is there at $10 million and has 6 seasons remaining, and the way things are going, that he would play out his string in college and then become an unrestricted free agent. It's everywhere.
Yeah, I did say it a couple of months ago that I had heard that he's going to go back at least another year.
But George just shot that down, and when he was done explaining it, I thought, yeah, that makes sense. And what he said was the Panthers are not concerned about that because Spencer Knight does not want to spend more time. He wants to turn pro. He knows he's going to have to go to the AHL. He's willing to do that. And, just figures that, at some point it'll work out. Either he'll come in and win the job or he'll be a backup 1 year, like 1 year in the AHL, one as a backup.
Yeah.
Is it possible that George is listening to Brian McCabe, who told me that exact phrase a couple of months ago in an interview, and I wrote about it on Elite Prospects, exactly about Spencer Knight, but then I still heard it the other way that he might be coming back to school next year. So I think that is what the team believes. I do.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, they're not concerned about it. I've talked to the team about it too, and what George is saying is exactly the MO of the team.
Party line.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, it's not a party line. It's what they believe. I mean,
it's what they believe. I mean, McCabe is honest with me, and he absolutely believes it. And he even went so far as to tell me when Spencer wants to play here, Spencer will play here. So I do believe all of that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Funny thing about those kind of things. So remember when Jimmy Vesey was it was such a, like everybody was talking about, it was such a big deal. And Bill and everything else. And turned out it really wasn't that big a deal where he ended up.
No. And David Poyle got mad at me.
So
based on what he's doing right now and what he did last year with Buffalo, you have to say in retrospect, it's not that big of a deal. But he did score 17 goals a couple years in a row with the Rangers. I think he's a decent player. He's not what everybody thought was going to be like this power forward who was going to dominate things. But
well, I don't know who would have thought that. I mean,
right, but it was like one of these things. It was free money. It was a guy who was ready to step in the NHL, and he cost you nothing other than an entry level deal, and that is the reason why it got to that.
So, by the way, the rumor I was talking involves Calgary, and it's not And I wrote about Johnny Gaudreau today, still possibly being available.
Sure, I could see it.
And more, even though he's having a bounce back season for sure, but I think at the end of the day, Calgary has kind of already moved on in their head. But I
don't know if they've moved on or they moved on because they know he won't sign there.
I think that's the same kind of thing. So to me, and so that rumor though, however, wasn't about Gaudreau. So I'm hoping I got some off the record right now, but I'm hopefully going to be able to talk about it before the end of the show.
Are you putting Johnny Gaudreau on your 2022 U.S. Olympic team?
He would be on mine if there is an Olympics.
Yeah,
I'm not sure. I'm not sure that he is.
He's a close one, isn't he?
Close. Well, I mean, I just think there are a lot of guys like and there's too many smaller guys.
I'll tell you this: there may be too many smaller guys, but it's big open ice.
It's not Olympic ice.
It won't be. Oh, it's going to be NHL ice.
Okay. NHL ice, but I'll tell you right.
We're going to talk about the Olympics too here in a second.
Well, I was gonna transition to that because Russ brought up before the show. We should talk about this. Last week we talked about the potential of a U.S. boycott, and now it comes out, Russ,
in a Yahoo article. So the IOC did meet with some human rights groups, and they felt like they were just listening to them and they never really did anything and they never really acted on it. I know that sounds shocking because it's the IOC. Right. And so now those same groups are now organizing protests. And if they get to the point where they really are starting to protest, that's when you really have the risk, at least in my mind, where countries are going to say, we're not showing up now.
And it's more about, it's about COVID and what we talked about last week, but it's also about it's also about what the human rights violations and what's going on in Western China and the mountain regions with the Uyghurs. With basically it's they're exterminating them, and I mean that is an issue that is really at the forefront of a lot of countries. And if China and the IOC are paying lip service, this will gain momentum with a lot of the Western countries, and you will see a massive boycott of that Winter Olympics.
They got 12 months, Kev. That's where they're at right now.
Yeah. No, I wouldn't even want to speculate on what happens there. But
no, it's impossible to know what can happen. But go ahead.
talk a little bit about Detroit for a second because first of all, one of my guys that's going to go up on my rumor chart and one of it is very tradable, I believe. And one of the weirdest players in the NHL is Sam Gagner. Like, just to me, it's such a baffling player. He has these huge point production games, as we know. He's in the past. He's had these big, streaky player. When you watch him play, he always looks good. Like, to me, he always looks like he's got skill. He looks like he's a great passer. And he can obviously score. He gets a hat trick last night. He's been on every team in the NHL at this point, right? So, Kevin, they're moving him. I think they're moving him. He's a UFA. You're gonna move. They move him. I would think.
Yeah. I mean, I would assume somebody would be interested in him, but he's not their big priority.
Right.
The guy, they're going to move Stahl. That's a guy that I think teams have shown a lot of interest in. I'm still, even though everybody says they're going to do it, I don't know why they would move Goaltending. He's one of their leaders. He's still young enough to be part of it. He's cheap. Yzerman, I know, Yzerman is very unique in this, is that he rarely gives you any indication how he feels about particular players, but we all know that he likes Goaltending.
Well,
I've heard that. Yeah, you told us that before too.
Yeah, so I'm not sure why they would trade him. I mean,
unless Kev, they think that you can trade him, get an asset for him, and re-sign him in the summer.
Right.
It doesn't really matter, what happens in the last 25 games of this year. You can, say, okay, we're interested in re-signing you on a 3-year deal in the summer, but we can get a 3rd-round pick for you, and we can use that 3rd-round pick to draft somebody who could help us in a couple of years.
Yeah, but I can give you 3,429 different cases of players who said, "Oh yeah, I'll just come back,"
and then they don't. No, that's fair.
Unless you're like what Keith.
I'll give you my answer on Sam Gagner because I've interviewed him a lot. He's a great guy. He is an excellent skater, and he's averaging 0.54 points per game in his career. So he's a half a point a game guy in an NHL career. He's got 464 points, so it's nothing to sneeze at, but he doesn't play defense. Well, and he's in an era where they love his skating. They like the fact that he's a veteran, but the fact that he doesn't play defense always seems to make him expendable.
I would say that Sam Gagner is the perfect taxi squad guy for a contending team, that if somebody gets injured, they can plug him into their top 9 as a and
feel good about it.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. You don't worry if he's in your lineup.
Of course, you also have Bobby Ryan in Detroit.
Well, that's the guy I was going to bring up. As Helene St. James, the Free Press, pointed out, the only negative of that is it would end the book club in Detroit if Bobby Ryan gets traded, because
Cherry Hills, Bobby
never
Ryan.
In the history of the Red Wings has been so much discussion about what books are being read on the road trips. Bobby Ryan read Fahrenheit 451 last road trip. I'll tell you what, he has taken
school district.
Bobby Ryan has taken Detroit by storm. Like, he has instantly become one of the most liked teammates and players.
Yeah, I'm not shocked. He's a good guy.
Fan base likes him. He every game he gets one scoring chance that you go, whoa, he's got it. So, they'll trade him for sure.
I will give Jack. I will give you.
Hold on. They'll dump him.
Jack, I will give you a scenario here that makes a lot of sense. The only problem with my scenario in terms of Bobby Ryan is the team that I think he could go to is low on future prospects and assets. With the Jason Zucker injury in Pittsburgh, you've got the general manager who drafted Bobby Ryan 2nd overall when he was in Anaheim, namely Brian Burke, as the team president. I could see Bobby Ryan going to Pittsburgh. Now that's if
I said the same thing. I agree with you.
Yeah.
He likes him. I like that a lot, and
makes sense.
Imagine him with Malkin.
Yeah.
It'd be really interesting to see. I mean, you had the 1st and 2nd pick overall in that draft playing on the same team, right?
Well, and another reason why he's so valuable is he's on $1 million deal.
Right.
I know.
Yeah, you could squeeze him and to any salary cap situation.
And here's a guy, Kevin, who maybe will go back to Detroit. Like this is a possibility. I mean, if they like him so much, he's liking it there.
Yeah, I think Yzerman would bring him back. Yzerman's been impressed with him. You can tell. That and just with his attitude and all that kind of stuff. So I tell you what though, I think the player that I've heard the most rumors about, even though I don't even think he's close to being back, is he? Ekholm?
Yeah, I think they said 2 or 3 weeks at least.
Yeah, at least, yeah. But I have heard such a buzz about him. Like, I've heard Boston. Imagine Ekholm on Boston.
Yeah.
I've heard Calgary. I've heard Pittsburgh trying to figure out how to make that work. Boy,
well, definitely Philly too. I mean, I can tell you that for sure.
Philly, yeah.
Winnipeg would make sense, but based on their need for defense, So,
I do want to read
Detroit, before we get off of Detroit. One more thing. They are in the midst of setting a record right now. That's really kind of fascinating for them. The Red Wings are 0 for 40 on the power play. Right. They are 19 away from a record.
It's a great record.
Going if they go over 60, they'll set a new record. So they still have a ways to go, but
it's not good for the power play.
But they can do it. They're capable. Like they can't get into the zone, and the few times they do get into the zone, they can't hang on to the puck, and they can't get a shot on the net. They get every shot blocked.
I'm glad if you were a betting man, yes or no.
So I think they got a shot. I'm going to go yes. Yeah.
I do want to read a tweet. I'll summarize it from Henrik Lundqvist. But he said going to the rink this week has been rewarding. His health is number one. He's really a little bit of time away from regarding his future, but he did say that he still loves the game. So he is definitely going to try a comeback. There's no question in my mind whether he's successful or not. Who knows? But he is definitely going to try a comeback.
Yeah, no, I think I'm.
I hope it happens.
Me too. I'm rooting for him.
I'm really going for it. I would love to see it.
I don't know anybody that's not rooting for him.
Yeah.
Oh, that's fair. Yeah.
Now, I want to touch on something because I saw the highlights of the game last night, and we've talked about Tom Wilson many times on this show. And okay, he's a train wreck. I mean, on the ice in terms of he's just a professional disturber of the highest order. And last night he was at his disturbing best. But the thing I was impressed with was Pittsburgh's response. They did not let him take control.
No.
Like guys like Cody Ceci, it started with him knocking Jankowski almost out. And Jankowski went to the Pittsburgh locker room and then came back and he was okay. But then Cody Ceci laid him out, and then somebody else laid it. I mean, it was really interesting how Pittsburgh responded to him. They didn't back down, and those teams could play each other in the playoffs. And before, Wilson was a disturber that would sort of throw Pittsburgh into a tizzy. I don't think if those teams played again that he would do that because Pittsburgh seemed to respond to it, Kev.
Yeah. Well, and don't discount to the fact that they know who's the director of hockey operations now and what kind of team that he likes. So they've watched this before in playoff series where Wilson's shenanigans have turned series, in my opinion.
Right.
He's taken over. So if anybody should know how to deal with him, should be the Penguins, because they have been victimized.
But it's so interesting with him because they showed the Capitals broadcast for that game, and post game he's yucking it up with the announce crew, and they love him. And there is this two sides to Tom Wilson, because I've interviewed him a bunch of times, and he is a very engaging, really down to earth kind of guy. And then there's the Tom Wilson when he hits the ice, he is a different Tom Wilson, and it is funny. It really is.
Yeah.
His biggest effectiveness is almost like hockey terrorism. It's not so much. It's not so much what he does; it's the fear of what he's going to do.
Yeah.
And he's got to the point where he's just out there, and that really he just really does. He gets in the heads of teams. He gets.
Yeah. That's well put. I agree.
Yeah, and the Western Conference version of that, or though because it's North Division this year, is Matthew Tkachuk. But Matthew Tkachuk is a higher level because he's. I mean, not to take anything away from Tom Wilson, in an 82 game schedule, he's a 15 to 20 goal scorer, and he's good. He's definitely a good player, and I think most teams would want. Matthew Tkachuk is a top 6, top line winger who could score 35 to 40 goals, and he's a professional disturber of the highest order. And
did you see what he said yesterday? I was really they were asking about whether he would fight his brother, Matthew Tkachuk.
Yeah, he's not gonna.
He said anybody who thinks we're going to fight is an idiot.
Right.
And he's right.
And
he's
Brady,
right about that.
And Brady, I don't know if he'll reach Matthew's level of annoyance, but he'll make up for being a dominant player. I mean, Russ, we discussed it before. That was a 2017 or 2018 draft.
I'll say 18.
It was the Dahlin draft. It was the
so I think it's 17.
17. The Rasmus Dahlin draft, which was Chicago, I believe.
Yeah.
The third overall pick was Kotkaniemi with the Canadiens, which we all thought was a reach, and the fourth pick was Brady Tkachuk in Ottawa. Imagine the Canadiens with Brady Tkachuk.
Yeah, I mean, I ranked them second only because I thought there was this super high upside for Brady Tkachuk, but because he was lanky, it would take a few years for him to sort of reach it. And even in his lankiness, because he had the feistiness, he could play in the NHL because he could handle himself. Just imagine if he ever gets to the strength his dad did.
Yeah, 2018. It was the draft in Dallas.
Yeah.
Are you putting Brady Quinn on your 2022 or Brady Quinn?
Quinn
Hughes?
Brady Tkachuk on your 2022.
Oh, yeah.
He might not. He might come up short.
I don't know, Russ.
He might come up short.
Yeah. He's fourth line or he doesn't make it, obviously.
Right. He might have to be a fourth liner.
Yeah, well, for sure. But if he
he can do it.
But there's so many guys like Jack Hughes. You putting Jack Hughes?
I think Jack Hughes has to make it. Yes. Has to.
But you only got 13 spots.
I get it, but you know what?
Your top two centers are locked up in Matthews.
Correct.
So,
he's a 20-game player.
Don't you have to put DeBrincat with Kane
and Kane?
Yeah, I think you bring them both.
And you play with Eichel. I play that group together.
I would too, Kev. I'm not as worried about size as you are for the Olympics. I'm not.
Yeah. Well, but you got other players. Brock Besser's got to make the roster, I think. There's just aren't as many spots. So
I think Matthew is definitely going to make it.
Yeah, Matthews is a lock.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, Matthew is on the.
Matthew Tkachuk. I think Matthew
Tkachuk. Yeah, he makes it.
Yeah, he's going to play with Austin Matthews, I think.
Yeah.
Now, brings up another guy who's obviously going to make it, which would be Patrick Kane. He's still going to be there.
Right.
Yeah.
And there's suddenly a lot of talk about Patrick Kane as an MVP candidate.
We talked about it.
Yeah, and other people are following suit. And what are your thoughts, Kevin? You think it's possible?
Certainly, it's possible, but there's two guys in Edmonton that are playing so well. That's the issue. But he has played such a big role in the way the Blackhawks have emerged. Like they're the real story. I mean, everybody's talking about Florida, and rightfully so. But the next surprise on my list is the Chicago, and I've watched a lot of their games because I find them highly entertaining.
Yeah, they are entertaining. I agree.
And he is so competitive every game. He doesn't care who's out there. He's going out and he's trying to win. He didn't buy all that nonsense that we were all writing about that they'd be down with Detroit, in the bottom two spots. But he's been very, very impressive.
Well, let me ask you this, Kev. When do we start talking about him having a chance to be the greatest American-born player?
Yeah,
that started a year ago. I had this conversation with Mark Lazarus, and his contention is he already is. And I said out of respect, to the group that's up there with Chelios and Leach and Mike Modano, that I'm not going to include a guy in the conversation until he's retired.
Right.
Because we all know what those guys have done. But you look at his accomplishments so far. Mm-hmm. 3 Stanley Cups, cup clinching goal, silver medal in 2010 at the Olympics. scoring and the consistency of his scoring. He's right there. I think ultimately he will be the best player.
I think he's on the way.
The impressive thing about the Hawks, Kev, is that, Kane's got 31 points. DeBrincat is playing really well. They're getting great performances out of like Matthias Janmark, who was in Dallas last year, Suter, who was a free agent, Kurashev. They're doing this without Taves. And we haven't heard a peep from anybody about what's going on with Taves.
Yeah, I'm actually worried about that.
Yes,
yeah,
I'm very concerned.
We're all really concerned, honestly.
Yeah, no, it is. It's a major issue. The other team we talked about that is the story is Florida, and there's an interesting record going on there, which we talk about the 50 goals in 39 games and all that. Gretzky and what Matthews is doing now with this incredible 20 goals, 20 games thing. Gudas has 98 hits in 18 games.
Yeah.
He's going to have 100 hits in 20 games. That is something that is like unheard of.
Well, and people have underestimated his importance to that team. Like, they were kind of pushovers, and they were like 27th in hits last year, and now they're like 4th. Mostly through Gudas.
He's on pace for 400
as long as he stays unhinged. I should say, for as long as he stays hinged and not being on the bench or not being suspended. Yes.
Yeah.
He's pretty good at it.
He does it every year.
Yes.
He's pretty good at clean hitting, and he does. Yes, Jess is up there for suspensions. But, if you take 500 hits a year, you're gonna get suspended.
Yeah. I saw him. He played against Detroit. Now I'm drawing a blank on the Swedish rookie that the Red Wings have.
Brome.
Yeah, Brome. And I don't know whether Brome has any idea who he is or what his reputation is. But, Gudas was doing what he does, which is after the play, he's coming over, and Brome was standing there. He's not an overly physical player, but, he bumps and everything. And he's looking at Gudas, and he's just laughing, just totally laughing at this. And, I'm sure the teammates are telling him later, he's serious about all that. Like, I think he thought that Gudas was kidding around with him or something.
The funny thing about Gudas is, of course, he hits, but, what people don't give him enough credit for is, his shot. He's got a really good shot. He does have a good shot. He doesn't take it all the time, but he's got a really excellent shot from the point. And he's a good transition defenseman. Like, he's a good first pass defenseman.
He is much better at that than he used to be. I agree.
Yeah. You watch him play, and you're very impressed. Obviously, the Flyers.
The only problem is, his last suspension, I was just looking it up, was like 6 games. So if he does something a little wrong, like he's on the 8-game suspension track now.
Well, if Edmonton and Florida are the 2 hottest teams in the NHL, the team that's just a little bit behind them right now is LA, Kev.
Yeah.
And if you talk about, it's probably a long shot, but if you're talking about the Olympics, you remember 2010, they included Chris Drury as a 4th line guy. How about Dustin Brown as a 4th line guy? He's got 11 goals this year. He's not exactly the fastest guy in the world, but if it's an NHL rink, then he's playing a 4th line sort of grinder role, and we know he can play that. But he's playing with Kopitar now, and Kopitar and Iafallo, and that is one of the better lines in the league right now.
Well, I keep delaying writing this because every day I get a new opinion on the guys who are going to fit in. But USA has finally reached the point where Canada has been for years.
Yes.
Where they have 49 guys trying to fit into 23 roster spots. And it is really, really difficult. Like, both of you said that you think there's got to be room for Jack Hughes, but it's hard to fit him on there.
No, I know. I get it.
It's hard to fit all these guys because there's a lot of experienced players. Like, TJ Oshie. You still want him?
Yeah.
Yeah. Very experienced player. Especially
I think a guy like Van Riemsdyk doesn't make it because even though he's having
I'm not even considering Van Riemsdyk.
Yeah,
that's how much they've got.
Van Riemsdyk has no shot.
Yeah, there's just so many good guys. What about Pavelski? He's a bubble guy.
A guy like Pavelski has to keep doing this next season, and if he is, he'll make it.
He's the Chris Drury.
Here's the other guy too, Ryan Suter is a bubble defenseman.
Yeah.
Ryan Suter, like he
Yeah.
was one of their key players for how many years?
Yeah.
He might be the first guy in if there's an injury.
So yeah,
Is Zach Parise?
No, he's done. No
He's done.
chance.
no, I can't get him. I can't get him on. I mean, it's hard enough to get Blake Wheeler. There's a lot of really good players, and it just a lot is going to come down of how much they value experience versus young talent that we're not quite sure about yet.
I'll tell you this, Kev. I don't know how you fall on what side of the fence. I'm wanting to have some veterans there, but the more young legs, the better to me. You know what? It's a young man's game. I don't want to have a lot of 35-year-old guys because they're experienced and watch them heaving, in the third, fourth game against Canada or whoever it's against.
Yeah.
No.
I mean, that a really young team could also have a lot of trouble against like an experience.
I'm not saying a really young team. I'm saying there should be some veterans. But if I'm deciding on, let's say, 3 or 4 spots, and I already have 4 or 5 good veterans on this team, and it's between a younger player who maybe even has a little more upside than the older player, I'm siding on the younger player side.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be a younger team, but the younger players, are guys, like Matthews and Eichel that have been
long enough, right?
Yeah, Dylan Larkin's going to be like a 4th line center if he
but he'd be a great one.
and with the great speed, and I think you got to have Trocheck. I want him to check. I want him to win faceoffs.
Right.
Yeah, you have to have a guy like that, so he could be that guy.
Yeah. So.
And you're probably, like you said, Kevin, they're at the point where, like Canada, for example, is so deep up the middle that they move guys like Tavares or McKinnon to the wing.
Right.
There's so many centers that the U.S. have now. It's not like they're picking, we have to have Paul Stastny because there's nobody else who can play center. They have so many guys who can play center. They're going to be moving those guys to the wing. But the problem is that you want guys who are actual wingers playing the wing too.
Well, some of them, I want to skate them out of the rink. But I'm also confident at least that the U.S. has better goaltending than Canada. Canada does not have the same level of goaltending anymore.
Well, yeah, I mean, now, people are saying, well, they're not going to choose Price. They're going to choose even if Price
will be on the team.
Price will be on the team. He just may not be the starter. The question
but who's the starter? It's not going to be. I don't think it's Carter Hart yet, and I don't think it's going to.
No, I don't think it's Carter Hart yet.
It could be Bennington.
If Bennington, I'm Blackwood a lot. Mackenzie Blackwood. I think he'll
be in camp. I don't know if he'll make it.
Yeah, Kev, you wrote a piece for USA Today this week about the Panarin situation, and I wanted to talk about that and ask you about that because, I mean, it's sort of disappeared from like the front pages right now because he's away from the club and everything. But this is, I mean, really is sort of a scary situation, and I mean, we haven't seen much of this before, but him getting involved in the political situation in Russia and all the ramifications it had, it's really ugly. It's really scary.
Well, it really is. And I there are only 33 Russians in the NHL. And when I say that to folks, some people are actually surprised at that. Mm-hmm. But we haven't had all that many in the last few years for a variety of reasons. But since the KHL obviously came in, a lot of Russians have stayed home. If you're not a star and you come over here, you tend to want to stay where it's a shorter schedule and you can still make decent money. Right. But what strikes me is of those 33 Russian players, Panarin is the only one who has taken the anti-Putin stand and has supported the opposition leader that was thrown, in prison. And so it doesn't, as everyone is saying, it feels fishy that a month after he does that suddenly he's accused of doing something 10 years ago by a very pro-Putin former NHL player named Andrei Nazarov. And, people remember him, a number 10 pick for the San Jose Sharks, who they thought was going to be a scoring force, and turns out he ended up being a tough guy. I mean, how many Russian tough guys did we have in the NHL? Not very many. And, one of the ways he sort of brought the spotlight back to himself in Russia is by saying a lot of controversial things, number one, and two, by sort of becoming the super patriot, the pro Putin guy who always, he would say things like, the NHL discriminates against Russian players, and the KHL is almost as good, if not better, and saying all those kind of things. And he regularly criticized Panarin as a guy, collecting the American dollars and not doing anything, and then saying things that's going to cause unrest in the homeland. So there are a lot of people around the league that were concerned about when Panarin said what he said. I give the kid a lot of credit for speaking his mind. It's easy in our country to spew whatever you want to spew, because we have protections. But we've seen bad things happen to people, in Russia. So I think people understand why he took the leave of absence, and that he's trying to make sure that his family is okay. There's absolutely no timetable for him to come back. Basically, they said, come back when you can come back, when you feel comfortable. Now, saying all that, I always like to throw this in, because we have no idea whether this allegation is true or false.
Right.
I'm only addressing whether or not he was targeted with this, and we also, I had Slava Malamud, who is a former Russian journalist. He read the original piece in Russian, and he said in that story, Nazarov actually says, "I'm doing this to exact revenge for his political positions."
Right.
So that's why I'm bringing it up now.
Well,
He
Ken,
readily admits that.
that's funny. The only thing I can tell you is I did get messaging from a source that I have there in Russia, and basically what I was told is Panarin didn't do anything. He did not hit a woman. None of that happened.
Well, I didn't interview any players from that team, but there was an incident.
There was an incident that involved more than just Panarin. And so that is what will complicate us getting to the truth of it. There actually were, witnesses in Latvia to an incident. And so basically that's what we know. And it doesn't seem like this was coming from Putin. It does seem like it was coming just from him for whatever revenge he wanted to get on Panarin.
Well, and that's the point.
You have that right.
Yeah, that was the point that I quoted some experts on Russia who said that oftentimes this is well below Putin's level of concern. But there are people who just take it upon themselves, and we see that in our own country sometimes. Take it upon themselves to support their guy to the nth degree, and sometimes that means doing things that we would not consider appropriate. So this could just be a one-person campaign, but it still has the potential of creating a dangerous situation for Panarin. So it's really teams look for reasons why they haven't had good seasons, but I think it's fair to say the Rangers have some legitimate things, going to the COVID that hits the Zibanejad. He hasn't been the same player since then.
He's starting to pick it up now. Against the Flyers, he started to play more like himself and shooting more. So I think that's starting to change for him.
The D'Angelo
situation.
Yeah.
Panarin. I mean, they're already with one of the weakest offensive teams. And now,
and their defense is a mess too. It is.
Yeah.
Now Hall. Yeah. Keandre Miller was also on the COVID list just for
right. And Trouba's out with a broken thumb,
and Trouba's out, and so their defense is a mess currently too.
And I was looking at the standings this morning, and I was shocked to see that the Rangers had the same exact record as the Buffalo Sabres, and there is no bigger train wreck in this league right now than the Buffalo Sabres when it comes to.
That's saying a lot because
that's saying a lot. It's like, last night. And I had this confirmed.
It's 5 without the Buffalo Sabres slam today, but
back. Can you blame us? I mean,
no, I'm just saying we've talked about this a lot.
I know, but there's always something new, and then that's why I was going to be brief on this.
Go ahead.
Jack Eichel, Ralph Kruger last week in a press availability, it was asked about Jack Eichel because Jack Eichel wasn't playing very well, and was asked, "Is Jack Eichel injured?" And he says no. Now Jack Eichel gets hurt in the pregame skate yesterday, and in the media availability afterward, Kruger says, well, he's been dealing with an upper body injury since training camp. Hey, Ralph, what happened to him not being injured? So he's out right now. Nobody knows how long he's going to be out. No, Linus Ullmark, their number one goaltender, has a .920 save percentage, and he made an unbelievable save on Nico Hischier yesterday, and he hurt himself. He stretched too far, and they pulled him out. And good old Carter Hutton was in there, and he cost them the game. 4 goals on 25 shots. He's terrible. And the third thing is they scratched for the third game in a row Jeff Skinner, and apparently Don Meehan, his agent, talked to Kevin Adams. It was a rather frank discussion. And today he was skating with the Sabres, starting lineup. But Ralph Kruger, even after that, would not guarantee that Jeff Skinner is going to be back in the lineup. There is something going on between this team,
it's such a mess,
and Skinner, and it is absolutely, I think, killing this team.
I mean, the only thing I have to add is I didn't think Kevin Adams had a good offseason. Carter Hutton was still there. That's not a good backup. Now Dustin Tokarski is their next man up. That's not a good option.
He is amazing. It's amazing that he is still going.
It is amazing.
He's the
three, right? That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
But these are organizational failures. Some are things. Then there's things you couldn't foresee, like injuries and COVID. Those, it's going to happen. You don't know which guys.
Right.
But really bringing in Taylor Hall, Mike and I talked about it. It upset the balance of that club because then it made Kruger favor Taylor Hall over Skinner and started this entire mess.
And Kev, it's like unless they find a way to get Skinner to waive his no-move clause and get somebody to take that contract, which is impossible. It's $9 million a year for 6 more years. I don't think there's any way they get Taylor Hall to re-sign there. And I was telling Russ, it's like a few years ago when the Leafs, back in like 2008, the Leafs signed Jason Blake. They had Darcy Tucker, so they already had the annoying, feisty left winger who was good on the power play, and they signed the same guy for the same amount of money. Signing Hall was basically, you already had Skinner, and even though he's a bigger player, a more talented player, you sign a guy for $8 million, and you already had a guy in the same slot for $9 million. So what the hell are you doing signing him?
I would have signed Taylor Hall all day.
Yeah, me too.
Right, but
Especially here's the other thing. Yeah, Mike and I were talking about this, and you're the right guy to ask. People were sort of ripping Dahlin now because they're not seeing what they feel like they need to see out of him. And so I had Mike look up. I said, how old was Nick Lidstrom when he entered the league? Not that Dahlin's Lidstrom, but he's not. But do you know the answer?
Probably 21.
He was 21.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Dahlin is 21 right now.
Yeah. No, he's going to be the guy. I will say that the hype was so great on him that we all thought that he was going to be quicker to start him. Now, that doesn't mean it's wrong that it's taken him, this long. But
everybody's got their own schedule,
right?
And he's a different type of player than this guy. But if you would have gone 3 years out and heard what they said in 2012 about Victor Hedman, it's basically the same things they're saying right now about Dahlin.
It is.
Yeah.
And look how he is now.
Yeah, no, I agree. That's all the time we got for today, folks. Really appreciate everybody coming on. Thank you, Kevin. Have a wonderful weekend out there. Remember, folks, without the buzz, it is just hockey. Enjoy the games this weekend. We will see you back here again on Monday.